right here.
Gotta put my lock on my witch.
Magic trick?
I don't
know my guy can You shot before?
All right, ready to go. There's your review question for this morning.
Bro, literally, you know my mom was like, so I didn't get clear with him. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I let him talk to me. I don't even think he knows my name. He's like emailing me, saying, oh, I'm not clear. I can gesture and she didn't call him.
Well, actually, I have it for like 10 minutes.
Like, get out of here.
Like, I have class.
You can factor, you can't factor it, so you have to go.
You can factor X out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can factor X out.
You can simplify it with the X.
So you get 3x squared.
Alright, Jack.
No.
Minus 35 plus 8.
Yes, you can.
What goes into all of these? No, look at this, Michael, watch this. Nothing. Plus, oh, Rachel's not doing it that way. Rachel's
You still have the x on the outside.
Yeah.
You're doing it wrong.
No, it's just 8.
So then you factor, you put in the factor there. You get 24.
Oh, dang, Jack. How'd you know to do that, though?
Yeah. Which would be,
No, it's
so there is, 3 times 35, which would be 105.
You want a little help? Take a peek, please, at what I've written up on the screen.
Some of you are doing good.
It would be negative.
So Abel,
Mr. Anderson,
look at the screen.
What the heck?
do you need to, change the
Wait, no,
order?
there's -1.
Look at the screen. You want to be in standard form, which is descending order.
Yeah, Colin.
So 24. Yeah.
So 3 times 5.
Except, get your calculator out.
What do you always, if you're going to factor, what do you always factor first?
35 times 3.
Always factor first.
Good job with your order. So what's 105 divided by 5?
3.
The numbers, great.
105 divided by 5 is 21.
Before you do any kind of factoring, you need to factor
21 times 5? No, we need to
Has
get
to be a negative.
There's a GCF.
So it's probably summation 2 by 2 minus some negative.
Probably.
You heard me talking, right? GCF out before you go to
So it's 15 and 7.
15 and 7?
Yeah, that'd be 8.
You put 3x 3.
No, it's a positive. So it's 15 times a negative.
No, it's 15 minus 7.
You get 15 times a negative 7.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, so 15 negative 7.
So 15. What two numbers? -7.
So,
Jack.
before you guys take anything,
Why did you
I'm saying it's X up top.
You can factor out a 5 out of that.
Oh.
You can take an x here. You can take a 3x here.
3x, this would be 5.
You can take a
And this would
Now you do your
Negative
factoring.
7.
So x plus 5, 3x minus 7.
So it's X minus 7.
Equals 0, equals 1. Michael.
You have to keep that x on the outside.
And then x equals, yeah, then you put x equals 0.
If x equals 5, that would be true, right?
X equals 0
So it'd be negative 5 and then 3 over 7.
Or is he not like me?
plus 3
over 7. Oh no, you're right.
Add 7.
You want it?
Okay,
Yeah, I know, right?
I got it.
What is 7 over 3? Give it back.
Wait, what number?
What is it, Jack?
You!
Bye-bye.
So you're better watching.
105 divided by...
Max. Caleb Paulo said he loves you.
Oh, really? Oh, that's Caleb Paulo. Caleb, me and Caleb we're pretty friends. He's a very strong man.
No, he's back.
No, he quit.
He quit? He went to tryouts.
No, he went to trials and I didn't pass the wall down. He quit and I brought him the spot.
No, he didn't. I was going to say,
Wait, Rachel, is your brother?
you looked a little weird. You look like you're
I was
socially.
shooting well. I just need to get my overhead shot back.
What?
I've just been shooting my
Yes.
my right hand so
You look
my
stupid.
right hand's also good.
Colin, are you any good
Are you a lefty?
Yeah.
You're a
There's only
lefty.
one lefty.
Wait, you're a lefty.
If I for a 10.
I was gonna say you're off here. You're looking like you couldn't do already. Like,
You don't want to Jack.
For the test.
yeah.
We are
Like right was good, but it looked weird.
There's like quick
Bro, I
steps.
failed all of them.
Is he bad? Is he good?
Just small. You like.
He's got his custom. He's got
97? Who weighs 97 pounds?
Boy,
What grade is he?
our grade.
He's making varsity.
Michael, I saw Ali last
Is Trey Digby good?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the staff.
How much do you weigh?
He's my brother's deep partner. Yeah.
Your brother plays? Is he varsity?
Yeah.
This kid is fun. This kid.
Race
Davis,
these.
Davis can't swim.
Oh, okay. You're in for a treat this week.
You got Colin?
Kid, come over Friday night.
Friday night.
Don't make some stupid movie.
Callie wanted to.
Dude, guys,
And then I drove my brother.
I'm so good with cross.
I had to drive a lady to the hospital. I drove a lady to the hospital. And she's like, what? I didn't make any.
I have to go to movie.
No, I literally had to go to the hospital.
You
This
get to
lady,
go to the
like,
South
died.
Bend movie where there's like 3 chair lengths in front of you.
Yeah, well, I had to go. I can't say no, bitch.
South Bend, dude, I live right next to South Bend.
Yeah, no, I live.
I can see that. I can see like the theater.
You are pretty fast.
Colin, where were you yesterday?
I was flying back from Philly. Kicked out it. Yeah, she got kicked out. Yeah, she searched her Kelly's phone.
Just like a bomb.
She's very nice step outside. I know. That's right. I go, David. Wait.
Hit her with the cat.
She's randomly blocked.
Okay.
I bet she did. I even like I saw Kelly today. She said the dean's meeting because she missed 12 Bibles.
Hey, guys. Missing a solution. You factored out an X.
Oh, I get that.
You factored out an X, but you lost this factor. You said this equal to blank. You're actually right. But you never said that equals zero. All the factors. That's
X
right.
equals 0.
What up?
7/3 and -5. Yep, so all three of those.
Because you have to group them if they're outside the parentheses.
Like grouping, I don't know what you mean by grouping.
No, so like if you have X equals 0, and these 2 are on the parentheses,
You took the whole bed.
This is one of the factors.
I had one.
I don't know,
That's
the
the worst
grouping
part
kind of
about
bugs me.
it.
I'm not really grouping anymore. I know. But yeah, you said he's factoring things.
And she literally
Well, we get some algebra today. This is our first day like practicing.
Baseball.
Wow.
Baseball's game. Baseball's just the good sport.
Soccer
catches
is
like 20 mile per
He like he gets the biggest garbage goal. Like he just like picks it up and like shoots it out.
I mean, like,
Insane.
Oh, we went over there.
yeah,
Oh my god, like
it's only like
gotta get your baseball friend to stand up and walk around.
What?
Baseball friend to stand up and yeah, how do you like that? Look at it, our balls.
Okay, take a drag.
Yeah, dude, it's fun. Except for the
I'm
time I hit
weird,
I
your
respect the hustle. I respect the hustle.
Well, actually, I wasn't.
So,
And then I'll be
what do you think of old
What's you?
Jackson? So, old little Ellis and
It is you, bro.
Yeah, so do
I think we have too many, right? Because Greg, Xander, Ben.
Hey guys, quickly, let's go. A race. Move, go. Let's go. Got plenty to do.
You got it, Jack.
Guys, quickly return to your seats now. Let's go.
Quiz.
Not right now.
Oh, we're not doing the quiz right
No.
now? That's something you would do. Hey, Andrew. No, the quiz not.
Okay, so guys, please, in your packets, flip back a page to that right there. Well, guys, we're going to be efficient. I'm going to do one or two of these here with you. I'm going to have you guys finish with one on your own, and then we'll be to our concept quiz. So, shh, quiet down. All right, so if you guys remember from yesterday, there is often multiple ways to handle quadratics. And sometimes the tool you need to use is more like a jeweler's hammer, if you remember. Sometimes it's a sledgehammer. It would be inappropriate to mix the two up, right? So if you would take a look at number 3. Did you notice that number 3 is a quadratic, but it's missing something?
Yes.
What is it missing? Yeah, there's an x squared, but there's no x, so therefore b is which number? 0. B is 0. So this, guys, this is your key to understanding when to use this tool or when to use that tool. Look at the b. If the b is 0, then it would be better to use the square root property. I want to review that with you.
Okay.
Step number 1, if you're going to use the square root property, is you need to get the squared quantity by itself. So the squared quantity is x squared. So what would you guys propose as far as a first step to get that by itself?
Oh, I know, right here.
So subtract 4 from both sides. So you get 5x squared equals 35. And then if we want to completely get the x squared by itself, we need to divide by 5. Okay. So remember, we are using this strategy because the b is 0. If the b was not 0, we would not be using this strategy. It would be a bad move. Okay? All right, so then we get to this stage, and we need to get the x by itself. Clearly, right now it's x squared. How do I get rid of squared? I don't get rid of a square by squaring it. I square root.
Yes, sir.
So we square root this, and we square root that. The final thing to remember here is that we're asking ourselves what number multiplies to be a 7?
3.5.
No.
7.
There's actually two different numbers, and they are
Plus or negative.
plus or negative. Positive or negative square root of 7. So half of 7 is 3.5, and the square root of 7 is not 3.5. It's more like, it's between 2 and 3. We're going to call it about 2.4-ish, something like that. So resist the temptation to just like mentally do a decimal approximation. Okay, so x is equal to positive or negative root 7, and it just said to simplify your answer completely, and we have done that, and so we just leave it as is. Okay? Why don't you guys take a look at number 4. I'll shine that up on the screen as well. I want you guys to try this one on your own. Number 4. Ready, go. This one says round to the nearest tenth. So what that indicates really is that at the end here, you'd be permitted to use your calculator. In fact, expected to use your calculator to calculate the square root down to this case, to the nearest tenth. You didn't really put that into your calculator. I would go back and actually put what you have written down. I'd put that into your calculator.
It's not on your phone. Yeah, it is.
What do we do?
Let me help you. Let me help you, please. Thank you. You can get it later. I'm just going to help you. How did this -3 magically become a +3? It is magic. It is magic. Okay, so check this out.
Okay.
Shh. Quiet down. Did you all subtract 13?
I did.
Yeah.
So if I do that, I come up with 3y squared is equal to -9. And then after that, did you all divide by 3?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
You should have. Because we're trying to get the squared quantity by itself. So when I get here, I get y squared is equal to -3. This is where this gets interesting, because if you try to square root both sides, and even if you throw the plus or minus in there, which you certainly could put that in there at this point, when you turn to the calculator, you get y equals what?
No solution.
You get error, don't you? Doesn't your calculator tell you there's some kind of error? So, what's the problem with what you tried to put in your calculator?
You can't have a negative root.
You can have a negative root, but you can't do the square root of a negative. You cannot find the square root of a negative number, and here's why. Remember that a square root is asking you this question: what times itself is -3?
Nothing.
So what is a positive number times a positive number?
Positive number.
What's a negative number times a negative number? In other words, there's no way to take some number times itself and end up with a negative. At least if you're dealing with real numbers. If you want to think about Algebra 2 later on and think about what we call imaginary or complex numbers, you actually can work through this. But at this point, if we're only dealing with real numbers, we would stop right here and say that there is no real solution.
Or undefined.
I don't know about undefined, because we're looking for the solution to equation. The answer is there is no real solution. And so we'd stop right there and say no solution. Okay, let's flip forward to our last one for the day.
Hey.
And it's right up here. We'll move past the DMR. It's right here. Number one, flipping forward to this. We did one kind of like this yesterday. Let's try to read this. Do you guys see how there's only one squared quantity? It's right here. There's only one squared quantity. So I would say that there is no b, or that b is 0. What would you guys recommend for a first step if we were going to try to solve this using the most efficient method? So I can't multiply the 6 through. That would be violating order of ops.
Oh, maybe.
But I could get rid of the 7, right?
Yeah.
So I would subtract the 7 over.
Oh my goodness.
That would give me 6 times 5a minus 2 squared equals 24. Remember, the first step is to get the squared quantity isolated. Is the squared quantity all by itself right now?
Oh, you have to divide the 6.
Divide by 6. Do you see it? All right. So if I divide everything through, or divide both sides through by 6, I get 5a minus 2 squared equals 4. Again, we're trying to get the squared quantity by itself, and we did it, right?
Yeah, we did.
Now, how do I get rid of the squared?
Square root.
Square root. So I square root the left side. I square root the right side. What actually happens on the left side?
It gets rid of the parentheses.
Oh,
And the squared, right?
I was doing a different method.
So you get 5a minus 2 equals, what's the square root of 4?
2.
But also, in this case,
Negative 2.
-2. You got to consider both numbers, because both numbers do square to be a 4. Can you tell that we're not done yet? A's not by itself. What would you guys recommend for a next step?
Add 2.
That's right. So we go plus 2. This is where this gets a little tricky. Some might be tempted to say that plus or minus 2 plus 2 is plus or minus 4. That's not true. It's two, it's two different numbers. And I would write it, for now, I would write it like this. Andrew is definitely onto something. Sorry, I wrote that in a bad spot.
Is there 2 answers technically?
There are definitely 2 answers. So it would be 5a equals 2 plus or minus 2. Right? What's your final step to get the a by itself?
Divide by 5.
Divide by 5. Okay, so you get a equals 2 plus or minus 2 over 5. We can actually simplify this a little bit more. The way we do it is just to do what the plus or minus is telling us. So one answer is 2 plus 2 over 5. The other one is 2 minus 2 over 5. Just split up the plus minus to what it actually means. So what's my first answer here?
4 over 5.
4/5. The other answer is
0.
a equals 0. Either one of those will work just fine. This is really similar to one we did yesterday, but you know what? We probably should practice this again, and that's exactly what we will do tomorrow. Okay, let's get ready for your concept quiz.
David,